Okay, good afternoon and a very warm welcome back after that very, very tasty lunch. A very hello to our online audience as well. Thank you for coming back, or welcome to Communicate if you are just logging in. I'm going to do a little shout out because I got a freebie at lunchtime. Big thanks to the team from Nectar who've been showing off their cool products downstairs and notebooks. We'll put a link for them in the chat as well. I have for them to come up, but they thought they wouldn't, so I thought I'd give them a shout out. Our next session is all about the communication and the cost of living crisis. Now, I said at the beginning of the day a little bit about how the content for Communicate comes together. It takes us an entire year to plan Communicate. We will start on Friday when we have the evaluation forms from everyone who takes part this year. We then spend the next few months reading and writing and ringing up people all over the country and saying, what's coming across your desk? What feels important? What are you reading about? What are you all talking about? And one of the key themes that came up for us over the last year was the cost of living crisis and how it's affecting us as organizations, how it's affecting our teams, how it's affecting our volunteers, and how it's affecting the communication that we have with our audiences, our supporters, our funders, and our external stakeholders. So we picked up the phone again and we got in touch with three really interesting people who've agreed to join our panel today. I think all of whom are new to Communicate. So it's fantastic to have some really fresh voices and perspectives. So we're going to hear from Lorna first, who's a communications professional. I'll let her tell you a little bit about the work that she does and her perspective on this issue.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here and nice to meet you all. So yeah, my name's Lorna. I am an independent consultant with my consultancy, Surge Communications. I work across a number of different sectors, but I have quite a strong lenience, if you like, in travel and leisure. And I thought I'd maybe just sort of talk more broadly around communicating, perhaps when times are tough, because I think it is tough times for us as businesses and as individuals, and it's also tough for a lot of the customers and the people that deal with the brands that you work for. And I do quite a lot of work in issues and crisis communications. That's kind of where I specialize. So I thought maybe if I speak within a lens of how I feel about communicating, yeah, when times are perhaps challenging, when you're not in the BAU, when you're not just going through the motions, I think the first thing to recognize as communicators, because I think a lot of you are communicators, is to really recognize, what our power and what our value is to the organizations that we work for. Great corporate affairs, great communications can transform businesses, and it can help sort of be I'd like to sort of say that we're like the lighthouse that sort of is the direction of travel for the businesses that we work with to follow. So we have a really critical role to play. So while it might feel tough at the moment about what decisions to make within the sort of the cost of living situation that we're in, really, and I say this to clients when they are dealing with their own issues or indeed crisis, when times are tough, it's really about showing whether your comms function is working. Communicating in tough times is the purest form of communication. It really shows whether the function that you have is working. You get away with things in the business as usual, the corner cuts and things like that. But when times are tough and when scrutiny is on you, and when your customers are thinking, are you really listening to me? That's really when you show your mettle and whether your comms function is working. I also think it's when you really see whether the businesses that you work for really value the comms function and what comms can do. So I think those as kind of foundational bits are quite interesting things to think about. And if maybe the last year has shown you that perhaps there's gaps in your organization, so that you need to do more of that internal work to really prove the value and that lighthouse sort of analogy I gave you, then that's something to think about. I think in terms of talking specifically about cost of living, if we think about that purest form of comms piece, if your comms function is working, then you really know what you are and who you are as a business, what your values are, what you stand for, what you represent. You should know your customers and your employees. We'll talk about internal in a minute. You should know all of that. And if you know all of that again, this is not about reinventing the wheel. And I think it's businesses that think because things have changed, they have to reinvent the wheel is actually where you can become quite unstuck. So knowing your value, knowing what your purpose is, I would say is a super important thing to think about. And if you're not clear on that, get clear on it, because it will help you navigate how to communicate during the cost of living crisis, or indeed any other crisis. I think listening is an important thing to think about too. Listen to your customers, listen to your employees. You know, in the cost of living crisis, people are, you know, there's different levels, isn't there, of how it's affecting people. That's something to think about as well. One size fits all probably doesn't work, because there'll be some people who are choosing heating and eating, and there are other people who are maybe just cutting back on a few luxuries because, you know, the pinch has got a bit tighter, and that's very different. So you need to listen to your audiences, including your employees, about how it's affecting them, and then use that to inform what strategies that you sort of put in place. So I think that's something else that I would think about too. And I think, you know, it's a time where, you know, creativity and sound ideas and using that thing that we all love as communicators becomes really important. And creativity doesn't mean spending loads of money. You know, you can be creative on an absolute budget as well. But I think it's time to really show how you can really cut through and with your messages, perhaps with different channels, but keep it true to your purpose as a business. You don't need to change who you are. I don't know whether anyone has heard of the lipstick effect. That's something that's been talked about a bit in media over cost of living. And it's actually kind of a notion. I can't remember who it was that coined it. I think it was a media outlet. I'm not entirely sure. You'll have to Google it. But the lipstick effect is about the fact that when times are tough, when money in the wallet is less than it was a couple of years ago, actually some people think investing in those real luxury experiences and perhaps those things that feel like a treat or feel like, you know, not something that you really need actually becomes even more important. So don't be scared if you work for a brand where actually perhaps you do have something that's at a higher price point or deemed a little bit more luxury. There still could be a place for you within a cost of living crisis. So don't panic. I think have a little read into that, and you can look at how you can find your niche within the cost of living crisis itself. So I thought that was quite interesting. One of my clients sells really quite expensive cheese. They're farmhouse, they're organic, all of that kind of stuff. But actually, they're finding their place within the cost of living, even though on shelf in the supermarket, their product's probably a higher price point than others because they know their audience and they're talking to that audience. They're not trying to be all things to all people. And then don't forget about internal communications. I don't know how much you've talked about that across the conference. I'm sure you will be. But I think, again, I say this to clients a lot. You go into panic mode when you're in issues or crisis, or you're dealing with something that's a little bit out of the norm, and you think external customers. Think about your internal colleagues. You know, they may be struggling at home, they may be worried about their jobs, you know, all of that kind of thing is more acute. So just make sure that you take them on the journey with you as you're sort of navigating your comm strategies, you know, for your businesses and for your brands. I think that's probably enough for me to start with.
I'm sure we'll pick up a number of those threads over our conversation, but we'll hear from our other two panelists. So Saira is a landscape architect working for Bradford City Council. We reached out to her because we were so inspired by some of the work that Bradford City Council is doing, bringing nature to people in their everyday life. And I'm going to let her tell you a bit more.
Thank you. Well, yeah, as you said, I'm Saira. I'm a landscape architect, and I lead a team of landscape architects in Bradford. We have 14 people in the team, planners, conservation officers, architects, urban designers, and landscape architects. And I actually wake up every morning and think I'm the most luckiest person in the world because I get to change the city, I get to change people's lives. And there is so much that we can do. Now, Bradford is the 5th largest city in the UK. We have a population of just over 500,000, but most of the population lives in inner city Bradford. And we're one of the, I think it's the 4th or 5th most deprived cities in the country, so we have a lot of challenges. We talk about cost of living crisis. When isn't there one? When it comes to the environment, there are always, we never have enough money. We can do so much. And the way that we look at our city, the way that we work with our people, what they think of us and how they work with us is key. We have to be approachable. We have to be grassroots. We have to work on our partnerships. We have to collaborate. As a local authority, we're quite unique as a landscape team within the local authority. Not many local authorities have one. Rather than diminishing, we're actually growing because we very much work within the areas that need our support, with our help. The attitude within the team is very much not, can we do this, but how can we do it? There are lots of people doing amazing stuff out there. It's about linking in with them. You're not on your own, and you don't have to do things on your own. And it is very much about supporting each other in this industry. We are awash with money. There is so much money out there. We just need to get hold of it, and we need to make sure that we bring it to some of our projects. Some of our projects that we've worked on in Bradford that we've got a portfolio of over £200 million worth of regeneration going on. Some of our highway schemes are about 40 million. It's the way that you approach the projects. Our engineers work with us right from the beginning. We make sure that the environment is the most important thing, and it's not just about the cars getting from A to B. It's how we work also internally within the council and with colleagues about making sure that their schemes are better. If we can work on projects and improve the wider environment, we can give them those outputs. We can work with our planners as well. We can make sure that developers, we don't have to do everything on our own. Collaborate, partnerships, that is really key. Looking at funding streams, being innovative. When money is tight, that is when you can be the most creative. And I think one of the things that we do in Bradford is look for opportunities. And we have very much an open door policy. I've got, as well as some of the bigger projects, we have real small community projects that we work on. And quite often these start with no money at all. And these communities have tried and tried to get something off the ground, and they've done small bits, but not enough. And they will come to us and ask us if we can help them. Sometimes it takes quite a while because it depends what the project is, the scale, how we can enable them, how we can upskill them, how can we invest in them rather than just do a project and then walk away. So it's investing in our people as well in Bradford and upskilling them so that they can then go on and work on projects as well. Finding community champions who can work with us. A recent project that we delivered, this community group had worked for quite a while, and so one of the projects that we worked on, I'd like to play a video for you. So this group, it's in the middle of Bradford, real area of deprivation, lack of green space, and they approached us and asked us if we would help them create a community garden. And this is their video, this is what they create, and we're talking about communication, and I thought this would be a really nice video to play for you.
This space here sat like that for nearly 20 years or so, and people used it as a dumping ground.
So up here, there was none of this. There was no plants or trees.
I think we removed about 180 tons of rubbish from here. I live here, I live about 300 yards down the road. It's our community, our children, our friends that use this. So it's just about making our place a better place to be.
So it's giving back to the community.
It's been a work in progress for about 10 years, as I say.
I was approached about 18 months ago to help design and deliver this space. We looked at what their requirements were and created something that they could use in the next 5 to 10 years.
When they were building, I came over, asked what they were doing. They said they were creating a community garden with lots of animals, and I wanted to join in and help.
We looked at how they wanted to use this space. We worked with them, engaged with the community, had workshops and worked with the team here and designed something that they felt quite proud of.
It was like, what else can we do to it? What else can we make it more appealing, not just for the elders, but for everyone else?
And that's what we want to do, bring
the community spirit back in.
Yeah, have that connection again.
It's a little oasis in the middle of this housing area.
I mean, it was just started as a wasteland where people fly tip and everything. If you're part of the community, you want to get involved in this kind of stuff. You want to help out everyone around you, and it'll encourage more people to help out everyone around them.
When this nesting wasn't here,
This cage, we built it here. We built this from scratch, like no helping us, we built it ourselves.
This is a novelty for local kids around here. Because there's no farms around here, there's no birds, there's no animals.
And it was about coming together to try and make the park a safe environment for children, for families and young people to access.
It is humbling, it has to be humbling, because even if someone worked for us for one day, that contributed towards where we are now.
What you will never have anywhere else is the kind of relationships you have with the community in this area.
Sometimes the answers of what people need aren't just within their one family, they're actually by getting alongside other families and being able to then not feel so alone at times.
Me encanta esto porque es toda la familia, toda la gente que están aquí, todo el barrio.
He said like he likes it very much because all the community can gather up and meet new people.
We all live in a community, you know, assalamu alaikum to everybody, hi to everybody. So it's about using it for everybody.
I came with my mum and she just loves it. She hasn't really been out a lot.
My mum hasn't seen some of her good friends for years because just
COVID.
Yeah, not just COVID, it's just general life itself. We go to work, mum's at home.
It might just seem like a tiny thing, eating in the park with your family, but it's not. It's a lot more than that. It's helping people's mental health. It's connecting people.
I think this is what it's all about. Just getting involved in the community and growing together.
The community has taken us in their hearts, really, in this area. They've seen what we've done, they've seen the impact it's had.
And they put a lot of hours and a lot of effort into it.
It was just a place where there was lots of community but needed a lot of work. And then to see it as it is now, all the hard work and all the investment that's gone in there, it makes me feel really proud.
Yeah, I like seeing, how these things change and, how people create projects to bring, sort of kids together. You can give them opportunities to explore the wider world, explore things that they might not have access to previously.
And we call that kind of community-led culture. People are best placed to solve the problems that they have in their communities. And this is a fabulous example of that, where the communities come together with a range of partners to transform what was once derelict spaces.
It's about creating an environment that's healthier, and these little spaces contribute to that. It's about having a lovely place to live and work. It's looking at the whole environment, and hopefully over the next year we'll have more of these little pockets of green space opening up that are part of a bigger green infrastructure for Bradford.
This is probably the start of the evolution of this whole area.
I'm really passionate about this because I know where we come from, I know the hard work that we put in, and I know where we want to be.
Project, we didn't have a penny, but what we had is a community that really wanted to work together, and we just looked at different ways that we could bring this money in, and it was very much about collaboration.
Thank you so much, and for sharing the video as well. We're going to hand over to our final speaker, Adam, who's at Meanwood Valley Urban Farm. We reached out to Adam because we thought that urban farms and city farms have something very special to share in this space and the role they play, both in the environmental sector and in the communities they serve. So Adam, over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me? Okay, yep, good. Thank you for, okay, go on. Okay, that might be better. Yeah, so I'm Adam, CEO at Meanwood Valley Urban Farm, just down the road from Bradford in Leeds. I've been the CEO for about 4 years now. And I was just thinking as I was driving here, I often joke with my chair of trustees when in the interview they asked me the big challenges coming down the road. I completely failed to mention a major world pandemic and cost of living crisis, but hey ho, we're here, we're still going, which is the main thing. I'm just going to give a very quick flavour of some of the work we do and some of the challenges around cost of living. Some of you will be aware of the history of the city farm movement, sort of the end of the 70s, the beginning of the 80s. There was a bit of a movement, people wanting to proactively make a stand to protect areas, and that was certainly the case here in Leeds, the Meanwood Valley. Some local residents got involved with just literally a few caravans and sheds, and from that day it's moved on to what we have now, which is a 26-acre site, as you can see there, just 1.5 miles out of Leeds city centre. but also, and most importantly, we're surrounded by lots of neighbourhoods and communities that are in the top 10, 15% most deprived communities in the country. And that was very much why we were set up in 1980 as a charity, to reach those individuals and communities who wouldn't normally get the chance to experience farm animals, food growing, conservation. And that's very much what our work today is all about. So yeah, we have a number of programs like the nearly 200 city farms, who are sort of care farms, is what we're called. We have a big program working with adults with learning disabilities who come and get involved with every aspect of the farm, up to 5 days a week. And for many of them, they've been coming for over 20 years, and it's very much their second home. And for me, it's what gets me out of bed every morning, really. When I go and chat with this group, they're just joyful. And it's really, really crucial that we keep on doing that kind of work. Likewise, we do a lot of work with schools, particularly primary schools. We offer a range of projects linked to the national curriculum, and schools will come down for a day and learn about sustainability or composting, rocks and soils, that kind of thing. And there's growing demand for that work. And then we offer a couple of forest schools, which really picked up during the COVID pandemic. And it was therapy just as much for the parents as it was for the toddlers who came along. And what we find, Saira, who runs that, if someone can't afford to pay it, then we just let them in, or we do pay as you feel, which I'll say a little bit more about in a second. And then we have a thriving market garden. So an acre market garden, and we sell veg boxes. That has really been what we've developed over the last few years, and we sell about 100 veg boxes, so 100 households every week. Something we've had to experiment with this year is introducing a lower charge, so a smaller box at a much cheaper price, because we were finding, obviously with the cost of living, that was really important. And we give quite a large amount of our produce to a food bank and to charities working with people who are struggling with food. And then we're a visitor attraction open to the public 7 days a week, every day of the year, except Christmas Day, Boxing Day. And what we found the last couple of years, last year our visitor numbers dropped quite dramatically, and I think that was because of the cost of living crisis. This year, they seem to be going back up again. We have a small admissions charge of £3 for adults, 50p for children. So one of the things that we've started to experiment with is pay as you feel. So for our special events, summer fair, Christmas fair, we now do a pay as you feel. And we've actually found some people give a lot more money, but it also means a lot of people who previously weren't coming now come because they don't have to pay. So we're thinking, should we move to a pay-as-you-feel completely for our admissions, recognizing that we take about £40,000 worth of income. So it's a challenge, but something we're exploring. So yeah, it's a challenge. Obviously, as a charity, like all charities, we're facing massively rising costs, particularly energy costs. Our staffing costs have gone up. Obviously, we're wanting to pay our staff proper, decent wages, but that is a challenge. Balanced against recognizing that lots of people simply haven't got money to come and pay. So as I say, pay as you feel is something we've been looking at. Despite that, because of our financial challenges, we had to do a crowdfunding campaign this summer, and we managed to raise £19,000 over a 6 or 7 week period. So it does show that there is still a lot of support for the kind of work that we do, and we're very grateful for all of that support. We do a lot of grant funding so that we can put on free activities. So we do a summer play scheme, which is completely free, particularly for kids, young people in the areas that wouldn't get a chance to do that kind of thing. And we're looking to see how we can do more free activities. And we've also, this last year, I got a bit of grant funding to actually employ somebody whose role is communications marketing. community engagement, because and that was a bit of a risk, and it was a bit of campaigning with my trustees who were saying, really? But it's actually meant that I don't have to do that. I'm not a comms expert, but I was doing all of our marketing and comms, and it's massively improved our reach. We've got a lot more to do. Our social media is just transformed, and the individual is doing a lot more around community engagement and just asking people. As you were saying, we have to listen to our customers as well as to our staff. So yeah, we're going to be doing a lot more of that activity over the coming months, but that's just a very quick flavour of what we do. I'm sure we'll pick up some of those themes in the discussion. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to our panel. I'm really keen to hear comments. Questions are great, but comments or reflections, hopefully are from our online audience as well as here, kind of alternative payment schemes. It's great to hear about those. And I think, this question about how we charge for events and activities, whether we go the lipstick model method or if we try to make things free, I think is a challenge for a lot of organizations. And I know we've got a number of membership organizations here in the room. How are you balancing asking people for donations, asking people to join you as a member, asking them to support you during this crisis? So it'd be great that's a lot to digest, look out at the audience and otherwise pose that question right back to our panel. Have any of you got a thought about that, about how we ask, how we might change our ask of asking people to donate to us or support us? Adam, you've said a little bit about that. I wonder if either of you've got a view on that.
I think in Bradford, it's going to be quite challenging in the next couple of years because 2025, we're City of Culture. And at the moment, we're putting programs together for activities. And, utmost in our thoughts at the moment is to make sure that we do consider the kind of events that will be free. And that, and if there are events, we have a set number that we can give out to community groups and schools to make sure that nobody actually misses out on that. And I think, we will be looking at that a lot more. But the work that we do in creating spaces, what we're trying to do is make sure that we've looked at that equity of space and that there are good quality spaces within inner city Bradford, and that everybody has access to nature and our green infrastructure, that we improve it where we can. And, it's utmost in our thoughts, and that's what we're trying to do. We're reaching out to partners who are working with us. And for me, it is very much about creating, everybody has a right, everybody should have access to quality green spaces. And, as a landscape architect working in Bradford, that's what I want to do. But, at the same time, we do have some amazing organisations around as well that are struggling, and we want to make sure that they are able to keep their staff. People are in jobs as well, so it's making sure that we can support them as well, especially with funding streams. Within the team, we're quite innovative about where we go for funding, and sometimes it's not the most obvious place that you would go. And that's how we deliver some of our projects. Some of our funders are not the normal, organisations that would fund our work.
That's a great point. There's money out there. We just need to get it. We've got a question here in the front row.
It's a two-parter, really, sorry. So I was just going to respond to your question about we are a membership organisation. And I would say it's been really, really tough. Since COVID, we haven't seen the same levels of financial support that we have sort of pre-COVID. It's tough out there to get membership support, members on board. But I think one of the most important things we've done, again, going back to what you were saying, is listening to the membership, giving different options. So introducing things like payment holidays if they're on direct debit, or the option to reduce their monthly donation has been really successful and powerful. We've just launched our biggest ever fundraising appeal. which sounds a bit counterintuitive in a cost of living crisis. But what we decided as a sort of team, and from listening to our supporters in particular, the issues for the environment feel so big, I can't do anything, which has been quite a common theme of today. How is my little piece, my £2 a month donation or whatever it may be, how is that making a difference? So the idea in our bigger appeal is that we are showing them that actually we can step up for nature, we can step up for wildlife, and they can make a small contribution, whether that be to the appeal, whether it be to getting down there and speaking to their MP. There are lots of different ways that you can make a difference, but collectively that does move us forward. So I think that's been really important. And then my question was, what would be, has anybody got any tips for sort of leaderships of charities? So it's really difficult to keep staff motivated. Your staff are under an incredible amount of pressure. It's difficult to meet targets. It's difficult from a communications and fundraising point of view to really keep that value in your teams in the organisation. So any tips on how to keep staff sort of supported and motivated in difficult times?
I wonder, Adam, if you might want to just say a little bit about that. I feel like we could pick that up more over coffee, but
yeah, it's a really important issue, and I think one of the ways is providing sort of mentoring, coaching support. I'm certainly part of a number of networks where I am able to take some time out and talk to other charity CEOs, and we have time to, well, sometimes you end up in tears together, but support each other. But it's really important that we offer that to our staff as well. So we're currently looking at how we can bring some well-being support for all of our staff, because a number of staff are really struggling, not just financially, but with mental well-being. So I'm currently looking to see how we can fill that gap by bringing in some specific mental well-being support. But that's really, I think the key thing is communication and just being there for your staff team, and they really are struggling. Well, everyone's struggling, aren't they?
I think also we've just come out of COVID, and that was the most testing time. And I think people forget how we all rallied round, how we all worked together. And I think we need to just go back, and I think you mentioned, the gentleman mentioned when you were talking about COVID and support, and we just need to remember some of the things that we did back then, I think, and not put them in our COVID box, because we were very resilient. We learned, we adapted really quickly. And I think we just need to go back and just start, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We handled that really well as organisations. The support that we gave to people, we were really understanding, especially financial situations. You know, so I think there's a lot that we need to just go back and pick up again.
Can I just add to that as well? Yeah, totally agree. I've a client at the moment that it's going through a huge crisis. They had a huge fire, and it's significant for the business and for the staff and all of that kind of thing. And that's what we've been talking about. They really navigated COVID really, really well, really pulled together all of that stuff. And they're using quite a lot of those principles, I think, to try and, you know, it's going to be a tough year ahead as this business tries to recover, etc. I think just to pick up on your other point about, I actually think this applies to internal, but also the external piece as well, about, you know, getting memberships and, you know, engaging and asking for funding and all different stakeholder groups. You know, trust is built through transparency, authentic communications. Like, we know this, we're communicators. But I think, again, sometimes that can be forgotten when you're working at pace and all of that thing. Even when you were just talking then about the context and your new fundraising campaign, and you're going to do this, but you're also going to offer that. I really bought into what you were saying. I totally got it. And I think sometimes businesses can rally ahead and do stuff and then tell people after the fact. It's about, particular leadership team, make them part of that, make them part of that change process. The best way to engage, I think, in change management and having to navigate this time, is really authentic communications that it's living your values, isn't it? Everybody can see when a business is saying something and doing something else. And as I said, this is the purest form of calm. That will get shown up when times are tough. So you'll navigate it better if you live the values that you have through everything that you do. And ultimately, there'll be people that want to be on board with that, and there'll be people that don't. And I think that's okay too. I think it's okay that you're going to get a bit of attrition from that, because it's tough out there and people are looking for new opportunities and what that might be. And I think that's healthy as well.
Do we have another, we're going to take we've got 2 online. So can we take all 3? Is that all right?
Yeah, can do.
Stephanie, yeah.
Yeah, hi. So I was just wondering, obviously there's a cost of living crisis, but it's not affecting everyone. There's a lot of money out there, as we know. And we've been doing quite a lot of work we've worked for years with local businesses on their environmental reduction, but we have seen a lot, because of the Gen Z and the millennial generations, they're moving towards more social justice issues and wanting to get involved. So just wondered if anyone had any tips or experience of working with corporate partners and how to kind of get them on board with funding, or, you know, paying for 200 entry passes, those sort of initiatives. Is there any tips or suggestions from the panel?
Right, we're gonna hold that question. I'll get a couple from Izzy, and if there's any more in the room, it'd be great. Great to hear. Double duty, Izzy, running and talking.
So one of the questions from the online audience is about the cost of living crisis hitting young people and students, and how you would suggest to continue engaging them without losing them, especially as this group can often be less engaged with nature. So in light of the cost of living crisis, how would you sort of aim your comms at young people and students that are affected by this? And the second question is maybe one for Adam in particular. How do you recommend appealing to volunteers when at the moment it might feel that doing unpaid work is just not possible, whether that's because their time's being taken by paid work or it's just too difficult to get to a voluntary sort of activity? What would you recommend for keeping that motivation going for volunteers?
Okay, brilliant. We've had 3 there. Any more? I'm just going to throw in a 4th.
I won't remember anymore. I need 3.
I was just going to.
I'm only joking.
I've got them. I was just going to throw in another one, which came from a conversation I had with John Alexander, who was our opening speaker this morning. You know, talking about that kind of citizen consumer story. I know that you guys weren't here for that, but I just thinking about how we sometimes put our events and activities into that consumer space. You know, we're offering a nature day or a nature festival, and people are choosing to go, you know, cinema viewing figures are up, people are choosing to do this or that, or come to our event as well, and those things aren't always free. So the questions were, you can kind of pick what really interested you: appealing to corporates, appealing to young people, appealing to volunteers, and how we're asking people to just spend their money in relation to other activities and events.
So we base a lot of our consultation around food, and I think that's you know, when you're looking at engaging different communities, you look at you have to tailor it to different communities, different age groups. What your ask is, how much time you want them to spend with you, what you want to get out of it. And we do quite a lot of work with the university, for example, and especially the public health side of things, health and well-being and access to nature and spending more time outside. And I think engaging with them and talking to them about what kind of information they would like, how, I mean, I'm quite fortunate I have a graphic designer in my team, and we think about how we're going to put some information together, how we distribute it, how we share it, what media we use. And we've worked with university students. We bring people in. So quite often on our projects, we bring different people in from the community to work with us, so that it helps us understand the needs in that community. But I always find that food, if you're going to provide some food, you can get, and also it's, especially with certain groups, you know, it helps as well. And, you know, the venues, it's things like, you know, the weather at different times of the year, putting thought into how you're going to do your engagement. So it's tailoring things around different communities. You know, sometimes, you know, we'll go into a mosque for example, on a 5 o'clock on an evening, because we know that that's where we'll find people and where we want to talk to young children. Going into schools as well, supporting schools. If we can give the school the money instead of spending that somewhere else, but also corporate. Getting different organisations to give us some of their employees for a day, for a week, to do some of the community infrastructure projects. You find different ways of engaging different people, I think, and that's one of the ways that we've done it. But also money. My first preference is always money. If we can have that, that's brilliant. But if not, there are different organisations have different things that they can give you. And it's just tailoring it around that, really. Tailoring each ask around what it is that you want and what they can provide.
Great, thank you.
Okay, maybe on the volunteering side. So we have quite a thriving volunteer program, and it's specifically for young people and students. It seems to be attractive to, and food is the common thing. So it's around helping out on our market garden, the food growing. But the key thing, I think, has been creating almost a community. So the volunteers feel very much part of the farm, right from the beginning, from the induction process, but all the way through. And lots of social events take place at the farm, which they're part of. A lot of it involves eating food, music, dance. So when you chat to the volunteers, they really feel as though they are part of the farm. And they regularly say that it's benefiting their well-being as much as it's helping us to produce all of this food. And we give a proportion of our food to our volunteers as well, the stuff grown on the market garden. So it is doable, but it's having a really friendly, welcoming volunteer program. And just on the corporate side, that's something that we're actually developing at the moment. So I did a visit to Spitalfield's City Farm in Tower Hamlets, and they have quite a thriving corporate partnerships. One strand of which is getting corporate groups in to volunteer on the day, but they're paying up to £2,000 for a day's activities. Admittedly, that's London, right on the city, with the City of London, but we're just starting to experiment with doing that here. So we had Cadix, a big construction firm, came and paid us £1,000 for a day last week. So that's one strand. The other is actually trying to get corporates to come and sponsor an area on the farm or a project. And that's something I'm working on currently. I haven't had any big success yet, but hopefully that's something that we'll develop going forward.
I think it's just important as well to remember to have a very, very strong, clear story. We're storytellers, that's what we do. I think there was a question about how do I attract young people, how do I attract corporate, obviously all those audiences are slightly different, but I always think a really good place to start, before thinking about the different tactics perhaps, is do we have a really, really clear, compelling narrative as an organization about what our place in the world is? And again, it's something when I'm speaking with businesses, and you immediately want to go to what can we do to get them and what's the tactic. But I do think spending a little bit of time on that, really driving that emotional connection to what it is that you're doing and what your place in the world is, the difference that you can make, what you're trying to make, what your vision is, like doing a narrative session. Getting the leadership team in that, by the way, is another really great way to engage them. So they might not think they're communicating people, but actually once you get people in that, they love it. So get them part of that story, get it written down on paper, then think about, right, how do I target that at the corporate audience? How does that translate to TikTok, if that's what you want to do for students, whatever it might be. But I think having a really clear narrative into a very simple message track, I think, isn't it, I don't know what the data is, but I think it's something like you have to see something 7 times before it like genuinely sinks in and makes I mean, there's all sorts of studies about that, but I've just remembered the number 7 thing. You see it 7 times, then you're more likely to sort of take action. So you've got to hammer that narrative in about 3 bullet points 7 times to a group for them to even to start to think about wanting to do something about it. So just strip it back and keep it simple would be one of my tips. Like, you all know your audiences, don't overcomplicate it, and work on the narrative, I think would be my tip.
Okay, fantastic. I think that brings us to a kind of natural close. And I think for those of us who were live, I think there's lots we can pick up there over some informal conversations. Thanks to everybody who's joining us online as well, and for your excellent questions. If you can help me thank our fantastic panel. Okay, we will be back here at 3 o'clock.